Steel, salt, silence. On a cold morning in the year 1038, a fleet appeared off the coast of Sicily. At its head stood a giant of a man. The chroniclers who feared him swore he was nearly 7 feet tall. A Byzantine general who had never lost a battle. Within 2 years, he would conquer most of the island. 13 cities, an enemy commander cut down in single combat. An empire's lost jewel, almost back in its hand. And then he would throw all of it away. Not in battle, not to a stronger enemy, over a horse. To understand how a man loses an empire over a horse, you first have to understand the man. George Maniakes was born around the year 998 in the borderlands of the Byzantine Empire. History records almost nothing of his childhood. He steps onto the page already a soldier, and already terrifying. He was enormous, loud, quick to rage. But on a battlefield, that rage became something useful. In 1031, he took the city of Edessa from the Turks, a victory that made his name ring through the capital. So when the emperor, Michael IV, decided to do something no Byzantine ruler had managed in a century, there was only one man to send. He wanted Sicily back. For 200 years, the island had been in Arab hands, and Sicily was not just an island. Sitting in the center of the Mediterranean, it controlled the sea lanes between Europe, Africa, and the East. Whoever held Sicily held the throat of the Mediterranean. Losing it, 2 centuries earlier, had been a wound Byzantium never stopped feeling. In 1038, Maniakes was given a fleet, an army, and a single command: take it back. But here is the detail that matters. The army he was given was not really his. It was a patchwork of dangerous men. There were the Varangians, Norse warriors, axemen from the far north, serving the empire for gold. Among them, according to the sagas, was a young exile named Harald Sigurdsson. One day, he would be king of Norway. History would remember him as Hardrada. There were Norman knights, among them a man named William de Hauteville. There were Lombard infantry, led by a chieftain named Arduin. Remember that name, Arduin. These were not loyal subjects, they were mercenaries, proud, hungry, each band following its own leader, each expecting its own share of the spoils. For a while, none of that mattered, because they were winning. They landed and took Messina almost without a fight. They pushed inland. At Syracuse, William de Hauteville rode out and killed the city's commander in single combat, earning from that day the name Iron Arm. City after city fell. The chronicles credit Maniakes with taking 13 of them. By Christmas Day of 1038, Syracuse itself was his. It was working. The impossible was working. After 200 years, the Mediterranean's lost jewel was turning Byzantine again. Maniakes stood at the height of everything a soldier could dream of, and he could not see, no one ever can, that the ground beneath that height had already begun to crack. The trouble started, as it so often does, with success. When a city falls, there is plunder, gold, weapons, horses, and the agreement among these men had always been simple. Each contingent took its share. After one battle, in the mountains near a town called Troina, the spoils were divided, and among them was a single magnificent horse. The story the chroniclers hand down is this: Arduin, the Lombard leader, chose that horse for himself. It was his right. He had earned it. There was only one problem. Maniakes wanted it too. Now stop for a moment. A horse. One animal among a mountain of treasure. This is the hinge. This is the small, stupid, forgettable thing on which everything is about to turn. Maniakes could have let it go. A great commander, at the peak of victory, losing nothing by waving his hand and saying, "Keep it." He did not wave his hand. What happened next, the sources tell us plainly. Maniakes had Arduin, his own ally, the leader of the Lombards, stripped and beaten, publicly. dragged through the camp like a thief in front of the very men he commanded. It was meant to show strength. It showed something else. Word spread through the camp in hours. If this is how he treats the man who fought beside him, what are any of us to him? The Normans had seen enough. The Lombards had seen enough. The Varangians had seen enough. One by one, the contingents that had won him Sicily turned their backs and sailed for Italy. And then the Arab emir Maniakes had been hunting, slipped away. By sea, escaped. Furious, Maniakes turned on the one man whose job had been to stop that escape. His own naval commander, a man named Stephen. He had him flogged too. It was the worst mistake of his life. Because Stephen was not just an admiral. Stephen was the emperor's brother-in-law. Stephen escaped with his wounds and his rage. And he did what wounded, well-connected men have always done. He went to the most powerful person he knew, and he told his story. A letter crossed the sea to Constantinople. We don't know its exact words. We know what it did. The order came back fast. Maniakes was to be relieved of command, arrested, brought home. Imagine you are him. That morning, you are standing in the ruins of a city you took. Most of an island is yours. Everything you spent your life learning to do, you have just done. And you look up, and Byzantine soldiers are walking toward you. Not the enemy, your own. They are carrying chains. You outrank every man in this camp. You could give an order right now, and 100 axes would answer. The choice is in your hands for one more heartbeat. And then it isn't. The iron closes around your wrists. The men who feared you yesterday cannot meet your eyes today. Somewhere behind you, the island you bled for is already slipping back into other hands. And there is nothing you can do about it. Over a horse. George Maniakes was shipped back to Constantinople in chains. And without him, the thing everyone had thought was about to happen simply stopped happening. The cities he'd taken began to fall, one by one. The conquest unraveled. Within a few short years, Sicily was lost again. 200 years of longing, 2 years of impossible victory, undone. Not by an enemy, but by a temper and a horse. The story does not end gently. Maniakes was imprisoned. Years passed. A new emperor freed him and sent him back to Italy. And then, almost immediately, another emperor, Constantine IX, recalled him again. Distrusted again. Discarded again. This time, Maniakes did not go quietly. In 1043, he did the unthinkable. He had his own soldiers proclaim him emperor. He landed his army on Byzantine soil and marched on Constantinople itself, to take the throne of the empire he had served all his life. He never reached it. In a battle near Thessalonica, George Maniakes was killed. They say at the very moment his side was winning. He died as he had lived, in the middle of a fight. Today, if you go to Syracuse, in Sicily, there is a castle on the water. It is called the Castello Maniace. It still carries his name, the name of a man who held that island in his hand and could not hold his own temper for the length of a single afternoon. Here is what his story leaves behind. We imagine that ruin arrives like an army, loud, obvious, announced. Something we could see coming and brace against. But it rarely does. It comes as a small thing. A quarrel over something that won't matter in a week. A flash of pride. A morning we would forget entirely if it hadn't quietly decided the rest of our lives. The fault line is always there before the earthquake. Silent, patient, invisible. And by the time the ground finally moves, it is already far, far too late to take it back. George Maniakes won an island and lost an empire in the space of 2 years. But he is not the only one who never saw the moment coming. Some of the largest companies on Earth have done the exact same thing in our own lifetime. We'll tell one of those stories next. If you want to be there when we do, you know where the fault line runs.